Tonight, a winter outing ends in tragedy. One teen dead, another missing after a late-night skate in Ottawa.
A young kid came to our door and was pretty hysterical.
The warnings that come with the warmer weather. A remote rescue in the Northwest Territories.
Fading daylight, the winds were 70 to 80 kilometers an hour.
What it took to reach survivors of a small plane crash. In Quebec, the big deal done. Most public employees off the picket lines.
We're really happy that they've all worked together.
And a Canadian listed as missing in Israel, now confirmed dead.
That's devastating.
Plus, an honor like no other.
I'm still processing it. I'm kind of digesting things because it's a bit surreal.
The new and notable names appointed to the Order of Canada.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Mirella Fernandez.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news tonight. Police divers in Ottawa have recovered the body of a missing teen they've been searching for since last night. He's one of two young people to die after falling through the ice while skating on the Rideau River. And sadly, lives have also been lost in Alberta and Quebec this holiday season. CTV's Jeremy Charon reports.
A tragic search for a missing teen who fell through the ice here on the Rideau River.
It's very hard to comprehend something like that.
Police say 4 teenagers went through into the cold water around 9:45 last night. This woman made the call to 911.
A young kid came to our door and was pretty hysterical. He just knocked on our door and rang our doorbell and was just saying that his friend fell through the ice and he needed help.
Rescue teams searched into the night yesterday for 16 and 17-year-old boys.
The kid that lost his friend, but he saved his sister, which was incredible, and he ran all the way to our house.
A 15-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy were rescued and taken to hospital, treated for mild hypothermia. An officer was injured while searching too.
Now, Ottawa has seen warmer than normal temperatures through December with 5 straight days over the freezing mark. Experts are warning about the dangers of being on the ice at this time of year.
Ice is always a danger, but in conditions like this is particularly dangerous, and people are taking their lives and the lives of others into their hands when they go out on ice in this sort of condition.
This comes amid a streak of similar incidents across the country this winter. In Edmonton, the bodies of a missing family of 3 were recovered this week.
I'm a father of 2 kids, and a family case like that take me seriously right through my heart.
They fell through thin ice while riding their UTV just days before Christmas. This neighbor helped with the search.
So when the helicopter came right there and the spotlight where the hole is, we was able to see the 2 tail light and the plate on the bottom.
And in Quebec, a 4-year-old girl fell into a river last week. Her body hasn't been found. Tragic reminders across the country of the dangers of thin ice. Jeremy Charon, CTV News, Ottawa.
A dangerous mission in the Northwest Territories has ended with the rescue of 10 people. A team had to parachute in to get to the group after their small plane crash landed in a remote area. CTV's Krisa Nashkate has that update tonight.
Just before 1 p.m. on Wednesday, an N.W.T twin-otter plane carrying 8 passengers and 2 crew members had to make a sudden crash landing just 16 kilometers from the Diavik diamond mine and about 300 kilometers northeast of Yellowknife.
The aircraft was a ski-equipped aircraft that lands on frozen lakes, and it was basically right beside its intended destination on a private charter.
6 people sustained minor injuries, while 2 passengers had moderate to serious injuries but later did show signs of improvement. N.W.T's president says people on the plane were able to activate an emergency tracking device to call for help. However, weather conditions grounded any initial rescue effort.
With fading daylight and what came up as extremely challenging ground conditions. The winds were 70 to 80 kilometers an hour.
The Joint Rescue Coordination Center in Trenton, Ontario dispatched a Hercules search and rescue plane from Winnipeg that arrived at the crash site about 8 hours later. 3 search and rescue technicians were then parachuted in along with supplies and medical equipment to tend to everyone injured.
Our focus has been first ensuring that they were okay, coordinating recovery.
Air Tindy has been in operation since 1988, specializing in flying to remote parts of northern Canada. According to the Canadian Transportation Safety Board, there have been 5 other incidents involving the company between 2006 and 2022. Causes include loss of control, incorrect loading, severe icing, and fuel starvation. This aviation expert says another investigation into this latest crash will follow.
They will basically go up there, look at the aircraft, examine all of the components of the aircraft.
Search and rescue officials say all 10 people are now receiving medical treatment at the Diavik mine camp facilities and will likely fly back home later this week. Marilla.
All right, Creason. A search for a missing Winnipeg senior with dementia is now into a second week. 81-year-old Earl Moberg went for a walk, never came home. Family, friends, and the Bear Clan and Indigenous Community Patrol have all been out looking for him. She was the only Canadian still listed as missing after the Hamas attack on Israel. Tonight, we have confirmation of her death. A spokesperson from Judy Weinstein Haggai's community says she was killed October 7th. Her body's being held in Gaza, where Israel's ground offensive continues. CTV's Kevin Gallagher has details.
For nearly 12 weeks, Judy Weinstein Haggai's family believes she could be alive. In an earlier interview, her niece told CTV's Sandra Rinaldo of the excruciating uncertainty.
How do you hold on to hope?
I mean, it's been very difficult, to be totally honest. But we want to see her back so badly. We love her so much. We're so shocked still. And so this whole thing just feels so incredibly surreal.
That hope was erased today, with confirmation the mother of 4 and grandmother of 7 died during the Hamas attack.
Well, it's devastating. We had all been hoping and praying for Judy's release and return to her family.
She was a 70-year-old poet, peace activist, and taught special needs children. Born in New York State, Weinstein Haggai grew up in Toronto before moving to Israel in her 20s. She filmed the beginning of the Hamas attack while she was out for a walk with her husband, Gadi. Both were shot and killed shortly after, though a community spokesperson says Hamas still has their bodies. Israel's retaliation to October 7th continued to pound Gaza today, with airstrikes taking a devastating toll on the 2.2 million people that live there. More than 80% have been displaced. This airstrike survivor is one of them. Rafah is the 4th city he's fled to during the war. Young Israeli protesters want their government to do more to release the more than 100 hostages still held by Hamas. As Israeli military command promised a transparent investigation into the death of 3 hostages, mistakenly shot by Israeli troops 2 weeks ago. The U.S. president promised again he'll work to bring all hostages home. In a statement, Joe Biden offered condolences to the Weinstein Haggai family, saying no family should have to endure what they've been through. Marilla?
CTV's Kevin Gallagher in Ottawa tonight. There are renewed questions tonight about police use of force in connection with an arrest at a pro-Palestinian demonstration in Toronto earlier this month. For the first time, we're hearing from the alleged victim. CTV's Allison Hurst reports.
Appearing to strike and pin a man to the ground, officers make an arrest at a pro-Palestinian demonstration on December 10th. Part of this video has been previously reported on by CTV News, but what's new is the first 5 seconds before an officer puts his knee on the suspect.
The guy is face down, motionless on the ground before the knee ever shows up. So I think to most ordinary Canadians, that's going to feel like excessive force. That's going to feel like police brutality.
Toronto police have denied the officer's knee was on the man's neck. Toronto Police Services spokesperson says the officers are taking the man to the ground who a few seconds earlier attacked a police officer from behind. The officers don't know in that moment who he is, what his motivations are, or if he had any weapons in his hands, so they are using the force necessary to render the situation safe for themselves and everyone around them.
You know, people don't like to get arrested and they tend to struggle. If he was not compliant with respect to, say, putting his arms behind his back, things of that nature, that is sort of the struggle that we're seeing as well.
Former Detective Mark Mendelson says Toronto police also have access to the officers' body cameras, whereas this video only shows one angle.
They may have had 5 or 6 or up to 10 different angles and versions of what this event was all about.
Adam Mellinson, the man being arrested in the footage, released a statement through his lawyer, which says in part, "The troubling use of force that officers displayed during the arrest is reflective of an increasing climate of intimidation towards Palestinian solidarity activists in Toronto." There have been hundreds of protests across the city since October 7th and nearly weekly demonstrations by this group calling for a ceasefire. Toronto police have said the vast majority have remained peaceful.
Alison Hurst, CTV News, Toronto.
Nearly 500,000 striking public sector workers in Quebec could be back on the job soon after a breakthrough at the bargaining table. A group of unions called the Common Front says it's reached a proposed agreement in principle with the province on the main sticking points, pay and working conditions. Union members still need to vote on it. And late tonight, a separate teachers' union reached a deal in principle as well. And Donald Trump is being disqualified from Maine's Republican primary. The former U.S. president is out because of his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. Maine joins Colorado as the second state to take him off the ballot, citing an older part of the Constitution. It bars insurrectionists from office. The Trump campaign is appealing in court. Coming up, from sobering changes to alcohol guidelines to a shortage of a diabetes drug.
I was so frustrated and I just felt hopeless, and it's given me a whole new lease on life.
A look back at the highs and lows of Canadian healthcare. Canadians had barely sipped their champagne to welcome in 2023 when they found out about new drinking guidelines. That's how the new year began. At number 5 in our top 10 stories of the year, CTV's health correspondent Avis Favreau takes a look back at the biggest health headlines.
The year began with a shock to Canadians, a drastic cut in recommended alcohol consumption, from a maximum 10 drinks a week to just 2.
I think it might be overblown.
The toughest guidelines in the world.
Not many Canadians, less than 50%, know that alcohol causes cancer, but it does.
And clearly Canadians listened, with alcohol sales down by 3% by mid-year.
Are you looking for craft product, or are you looking for a little more price friendly?
On the other hand, cannabis sales surged, but there were also new warnings that regular use increases the risk of heart attacks and strokes, with doctors reporting health problems among a small but growing number of pregnant women who use cannabis.
Potential miscarriage rates, lower birth weight, and we're seeing issues with behavioral and learning issues, not just in the early years of childhood, but into the teenage years.
In fact, the overall life expectancy for the average Canadian dropped for the 3rd straight year. COVID became the 6th leading cause of death.
We will remember the lessons.
While the pandemic was downgraded in May by World Health officials as no longer a public health emergency, that hit home for the estimated 1 in 9 Canadians that a new study reported live with long-term symptoms of COVID, including fatigue and memory problems. Scientists confirmed in 2023 they found distinct changes in blood hormone levels and immune function in those with long COVID and markers in the brain.
We have to have better solutions available to people with long COVID that we can say with conviction are particularly useful.
2023 also offered stark reminders that nature can be dangerous, from viruses to foodborne illnesses. An outbreak of E. coli in September from food served at several Alberta daycares sent over 24 children to hospital. 8 required dialysis. And more than half a dozen people died, dozens other hospitalized simply from eating cantaloupe that carried salmonella. The hottest drugs of the year, Ozempic, Wegovy, and other diabetes injections that also help people lose weight, like this woman who shed 25 kilograms.
I was so frustrated and I just felt hopeless, and it's given me a whole new lease on life.
Studies showed this new class of drugs also cut the risk of heart conditions and liver disease.
So a drug that lowers weight and sugar and does it safely is the holy grail.
The incredible demand has created a shortage that will extend into March 2024, with lawsuits also likely to dominate the new year because of side effects, including nausea and stomach paralysis.
Many have their symptoms are so difficult to control that they have to be admitted to the hospital.
But across Canada, the most pressing national health story of the year was the lack of health services. More emergency units closed for lack of staff or funding, with long waits for patients who needed surgery or were waiting in the ER just to get admitted.
Until you are in it, you don't really understand how desperate and critical it is. It's terrifying.
6.5 million Canadians still have no family doctor. Meanwhile, hospitals reported going into debt, hiring costly private agency nurses who are paid up to triple that of a provincial nurse.
That's very concerning that my money as a taxpayer is going towards a profit for some other agency.
Ottawa gave the provinces more money to deal with staffing shortages and wait times, asking for more data showing that provincial leaders are delivering more effective health care. Meanwhile, Ontario opened more publicly funded private for-profit clinics.
More surgeries, shorter wait times.
And Alberta is restructuring its provincial health administration with formal plans still to come.
Alberta's health system isn't working the way it should and the way Albertans deserve.
It ends the year with no clear solutions, making Canada's universal health care system likely the most important story as we head into 2024. Avis Favreau, CTV News, Toronto.
A few Canadians had their hearts racing, but not because anything was wrong. Straight ahead, the new Order of Canada appointees. It is the country's top honor, and tonight an opera singer, a senator, and several artists have made the cut for the Order of Canada. The Governor-General announced 78 new appointments. CTV's Sarah Plowman spoke to some who are still reeling from the recognition.
When opinions are already loud, Michael Deatter makes his point in few words. Like when he drew President Trump golfing over 2 drowned migrants.
I was immediately let go from the Irvings. They deny that cartoon had anything to do with it.
Or how he captured Canada's heartache. He's won awards, been published across Canada, and now in the Washington Post. But today, he became the news.
The Order of Canada is on another level. I mean, it's just another level. So I feel incredibly proud.
Deatter joins Calgary-raised investigative reporter Suzanne Craig. She and a team at the New York Times won a Pulitzer for their reporting on Trump's finances.
This sort of journalism matters, and it does trouble me. I think it troubles anybody in this industry, and it should trouble everybody that newspapers are shrinking.
Also being honored is longtime media personality George Stroumboulopoulos, Willie Adams, Canada's first Inuit senator, and Diantha Edmonds, Canada's first Inuk opera singer.
To be appointed a member of the Order of Canada by our Inuk Governor-General, Mary Simon, makes it all the much more special to me.
Pollster Nick Nanos is on the list, and so is Flavio Volpe, who in the pandemic helped the auto industry fill the gap when the world was short ventilators and PPE.
I represent companies with 1,400 factories, and I just asked them, look, if we got you the specs and the volumes, would you be willing to give it a shot?
The Canadians appointed today will officially be invested into the Order of Canada during a ceremony at a later date. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
A couple of young Canadians could be on that same path in a few years from now. Tonight, they'll have to settle for being named Athletes of the Year by the Canadian Press.
Shea, he'll take it up, climb the ladder and put it down.
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander has been named the Canadian Press Male Athlete of the Year. The hoopster from Hamilton, Ontario, was an NBA All-Star and helped Canada win bronze at the FIBA World Cup. CP's Female Athlete of the Year is teen swimming sensation Summer McIntosh. The Toronto native was a double world champion for the second year in a row, winning the 200-meter butterfly and 400-meter individual medley. And more Canadians making a mark. Coming up, the Maple Leaf at the New Year's Rose Parade. You're probably used to seeing lots of stars and stripes at the New Year's Day Rose Parade, but this year you may be able to spot something else. For the first time in 35 years, there will be a Canadian float. Here's CTV's Kamal Karamali.
Its flowery flair and rich history like few others. The Rose Parade has millions tuning in every New Year's Day. Dozens of floats making their way through Pasadena, California, and this year one of America's biggest spectacles will have a Canadian touch, a float from up north.
It's pretty rare.
The last one from BC in 1988, a rare sight and requiring a lot of resources. 300 people, 13,000 long hours of labor, costing over $200,000 paid by sponsors. It's all to draw attention to a Canadian not-for-profit, Coding for Veterans, aimed at taking soldiers from deployment to employment. Andrew Kennedy, a former military member, now a graduate.
It actually did lead me into getting an IT role within the police service.
The program now expanding into the States, and this is one way to make the announcement.
So how intimidating was it turning this idea into a reality? It was very intimidating. And we said, look, we got to have this kind of theme covered in terms of military. We want this theme covered in terms of IT. And how do we bring both of those together?
The final product, nearly 17 meters long, 2.5 stories high, every inch of its exterior made up only of natural materials.
The white in the background behind me, that's ground up coconut. The green, that's ground up parsley.
And let's not forget the roughly 10,000 roses, hoping all goes according to plan.
Now you just hope Mother Nature cooperates.
To show a not-so-subtle sense of Canadian pride for this American audience. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Incredible. That's a wrap on the day. I'm Marella Fernandez. For Omar Sachedita and all of us here at CTV National News, thanks for sharing your time with us. We'll see you again tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.